Hey, what's going on, everyone? I have a very special guest here, Joesph William Foster. He's the founder of Reebok, the global shoe brand, and he just released a new book, Shoemaker. Hey, Joe, how are we doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Jordan. Yes, thank you indeed. Nice to speak to you.
Yeah, Joe, we're excited to have you on the Clocked In podcast. So let's just start. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into shoes?
Okay, well, I was born in Bolton, that's in England, in the UK. And I was born in 1935, which is quite a long time ago, as you can imagine. And by 1939, of course, we were in World War II. So for the first 6 years, for 6 years when I was 4 to 10, my life was during war years and everything was in blackout, no lights on. So it was a fun upbringing, really. I didn't know any different. That's what you expect. It was strange when I was 10 and the lights came on again. So that was it. So my early upbringing was sort of during the war years. But when we start talking about the Foster, J.W. Foster, the J.W. Foster brand really started off with my grandfather. And that goes way, way back to 1895. And in 1895, as a youngster, 15 years old, that's all, he made himself a pair of running shoes with spikes in the front. That was quite novel because as a member of the local athletics club, nobody had spike shoes. They just wore plimsolls or regular shoes to run in. So that gave him a big advantage.
So as a 15-year-old, your grandpa was able to run. He might not have been faster than people, but the shoes made him quicker because it gave him such an advantage.
Well, indeed, yes. I mean, he was a cobbler by trade, so he had a good idea on how to make a pair of shoes. And he thought of putting spikes in and running on a cinder track, which in those days there was cinders. So if you run on a cinder with just regular shoes, the cinders would slip away and you'd lose some traction. With spikes, well, he had an advantage. So instead of being halfway down the field, he was beginning to move up. In fact, he got to second. And that was like a big advantage, which his fellow clubmates took notice of.
And did he do it just because he wanted to run faster, not that he wanted a shoe company or anything originally?
I think that there was two things there. One, yes, to run faster. The other was that he saw this was a way forward. This was something new. This was not been done really as far as he was concerned. He learned his trade as a cobbler from his own grandfather. And his own grandfather, who lived about 60 miles away, he used to go and visit. His own grandfather was a cobbler, but as a cobbler, he used to repair cricket boots. And cricket boots, they had spikes in the bottom. And of course, he would ask his grandfather, why do they have spikes in the bottom? Well, it gives you more traction, it gives you grip. You don't slip on the grass when you're playing cricket. And I think that was probably a light bulb moment for my grandfather. He thought, well, why don't I do that in a pair of running shoes?
Yeah.
So from his point of view, that would give him an advantage. The other thing was it was novel, it was new. Why not? Possibly there's some business here. Do you think maybe? Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. It sounds new. So then the generation in between you, your father, he went into the shoe industry as well, right?
Yeah, well, if you think my grandfather started off really at the beginning of the 20th century, by 1900, he made his own first shoes in 1895. By 1900, he had a business because all his fellow athletes and all the athletes within a few miles of him, they wanted those spike running shoes. So by 2000, he set himself up as J.W. Foster. And he was making running shoes for local athletes and athletes throughout the UK. However, we had a war to intervene. World War II came along. So from 1914 to 1918, they were repairing army boots.
Because everyone had to go. Everyone had to assist with the war efforts.
That's right. But by the time 1920 came along, they were back into making running shoes. And this was my grandfather Joe's, this was his belle epoque, the 20s. Fantastic decade for him. In 1920 itself, in Antwerp, he was supplying the Olympic teams with running shoes. And 24 and 28, he had lots and lots of gold medals. But what stands out amongst those gold medals are three in particular. One was Harold Abrahams, another one Eric Liddell, and the third one was Lord Burleigh. Now, they're the athletes who were actually immortalized in the film Chariots of Fire. So he made those shoes when they were actually breaking the records and earning the gold medals.
Wow, that's iconic. That's awesome for the brand and for just his experience and exposure. So you and your brother were growing up and you guys knew you were going to be in the shoe industry?
Well, yes, I think, you grow up, I say we grew up through the Second World War. But my grandfather died in 1933. He was only young. He was only 53 at the time, which is a shame. I never knew him because I was born in 1935. But I am to be born on his birthday, on the 18th of May. So that's why I was called Joe as well. My grandmother said he's brought his name with him. So I'm Joesph. So as Joe, I grew up during the war. By 1948, my brother Jeff, he joined the Joesph Fosters, which was then Joesph Foster and Sons. The sons, of course, had taken over, and my father and uncle. He joined there. I didn't join until 1952. I spent a little more time at college. However, by 1953, it was time to do national service. We still had it in those days in the UK, where you did 2 years in the forces. I went in the RAF, Jeff went in the army, and he served his 2 years in Germany. And what did he see? Well, he saw Adidas and Puma and what they were doing with their shoes and how they were progressing. They were becoming big names. So when we came back out of the forces in 1955, we were looking at a business, Joesph Foster and Sons. It was a failing business. They were still stuck in the 1940s, 1930s. They were still making the same shoes, which was fine, but things were moving on. And we tried to persuade them, you got to move on. But for whatever reasons, father and uncle did not get on well together. In fact, by the time we had done our national service, they were really feuding, hardly speaking to each other. So to try and get them to work together, to change the business, to make some plans, to start some marketing, to think about the future, just impossible. In fact, my father said to me, look, when we're gone, this business will be yours. And my only response to that was, well, I'm sorry, Dad, but by the time you are gone, this business will have gone way, way before, because it's dying now. So come on, let's move on. However, we couldn't. There's nothing we could do to persuade them to do anything, which really left Jeff and myself with only one decision, and that is if we wanted a future following grandfather's example way back in 1995, we had to leave. So in 1958, we left and we set up our own small company just down the road in the next town.
At 23 years old, right?
23 years old, and Jeff was 25 at that time, yes. But we are 23 years old. So, you're young, you're indestructible, you can do anything. Yeah, whatever, we can do it. And we just spent 2 years doing national service, which meant you learned an awful lot of independence. Yeah, you just learn the independence. Yeah. So we set our company up in Bury, which was just down the road, say 6 miles, Mercury Sports Footwear. We thought that was a good name. We had the Winged Messenger as our logo, which was very good. And it was fine. For 18 months, it was fine until our accountant, because we were doing okay. We were doing nicely, thank you. And our accountant said, you better register your name, Joe. But register Mercury, because if you don't register that and other people see it's doing well, they'll copy you. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, don't copy you. So we've got to register it. So we applied to the registrar, and the registrar came back to say, I'm sorry, Mercury is already pre-registered by British Shoe Corporation. So they'll sell it to you for £1,000. Well,
oh my God.
In those days,
saw you guys coming.
Today, that's just back pocket money. But in those days, that's like me saying to you, well, you can have a brand for $100,000. Like,
yeah, it's just absurd.
Yeah, so that was a no-no. But the patent agent had seen, he said, look, what you need is you've got to bring me about 10 names, he said, because putting these through the register, if you do it one by one, you might be here for a long time. So let's get 10 names, let's check 10 names through. And the guy, the patent agent, I was in his office at the time, and he pointed through the window and he pointed to a sign, Kodak. And I said, Kodak, why Kodak? He said, because Kodak means nothing. It's an invented name. It's made up. It's not like Mercury. We all know what Mercury is. No, this is just an invented name. So bring me 10 names. You think of going back and trying to think of one name, never mind 10 names.
Yeah.
However, we sat down there and we had lots of birds, lots of animals. But during that war, 1943, I was only 8 at the time, I won a race and the prize was a Webster's dictionary, an American dictionary of all things, would you believe? I don't know why during the war it would be American dictionary, but there, it's American dictionary. And at the time we were looking for names and I thought, well, the letter R, I like that letter R. I'll just see what I can find in this dictionary. So I'm thumbing through the dictionary and I come across Reebok, R-E-E-B-O-K, a small South African gazelle. Oh, gazelle, rung a bell. Ooh. That sounds good. That sounds brilliant. Put this at the top of the list. So with all the others, this is the top of the list. I go back to see the patent agent. And I said, look, I know we've given you 10 here, but this is the one we want. We have got to be in love with this. This has got to be our passion because, we've got to make it work.
Yeah.
And as it happened, it's the only one that came out that we could actually register. But the registrar said, I can only put you in Part B of the register. What's that? Why Part B? Well, he said, if somebody comes to me and said, we're making shoes out of Reebok skin, I can't stop them. We can't do anything about it. However, Jordan, 20 years later, he came back to us and said, we've now moved you from Part B to Part A.
Thank God.
now everybody knows that Reebok is a shoe.
Yeah. What a story around the name. I mean, you got lucky there. I mean, part of it's luck, part of it's triumph, but it's crazy that it's stuck the entire time.
A big part of life is luck. And a big part of our life, we've had our bad times. We've had some sad times. But you've got to look and you've got to recognize when your luck comes along. And luck has come along a few times because we registered, of course, as Reebok in 1960. And it was only about 3 or 4 years after that Adidas came along because we had 2 stripes. They have 3 stripes. We had 2 stripes and a T-bar.
Yeah.
And then they said, look, your 2 stripes and your T-bar is an infringement of our 3 stripes. And either you got to stop doing this or we'll sue you.
Yeah.
So we were delighted. Can you think? Adidas, they've seen us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a small company and Adidas now. They're telling us, look, we're infringing them. That's brilliant because they've noticed us. So we didn't look at that as a bad thing. We looked around, got 1 or 2 ideas and came up with the arrow, which you see on the side of the shoe now. And we put a lateral stripe on as well. So that brought us, again, a different silhouette to our shoe. And that silhouette is something that people now recognize for a long time, but it gave us a different recognition. So again, in many ways, whilst Adidas didn't like us doing what we were doing, they did us a good turn. That was another piece of luck because we then ended up with a silhouette which was much more original than the 2 stripes we had.
Yeah. See, and that's amazing. I love that perspective where you go, the big guy finally, they're trying to sue us by a big company. And you're like, no, they noticed us. We're big. We're getting bigger. This is exciting.
Yeah.
I love that perspective.
Well, I think that one of the things in life that you have to have is the optimism and the view that most things that could be a problem and seem to be a problem when it hits you could actually be a bit more luck. A step forward, and you're going to see what you can do out of anything that comes along. Can you turn it around, and can you turn that around to your advantage? So that gave us a nice advantage. But the problem was that Adidas had really taken over as the people supplying soccer. They were big in football, soccer, and for us to make a name in soccer would be difficult.
Yeah.
Grandfather had been supplying a lot of the British soccer teams with training shoes and football boots. But by the time we come along, Adidas had taken that. And so we had to concentrate on what we thought we could make a name in, and that was in athletics.
Yeah.
Now came the next piece of luck. And the next piece of luck was in America. Running became big, real big. And it became a category that was outstripping most other sports itself in America. In those days, soccer didn't even apply in America. It was a small, nobody was playing soccer in the 50s and 60s. It's a new phenomenon that's really sort of come along. But the first time I went to the States was in 1968. In 68, our government, in fact, invited people from the sports trade to participate in the NSGA show, National Sporting Goods Association of America show in Chicago. And they said, look, we'll pay for the stand, we'll pay for your return air flights, and we'll pay half of your hotel bill. Well, you know, with that sort of offer, you can't refuse, can you, really?
Gotta go to America.
Yeah, you gotta go. And, you know, what an adventure. Yeah, a trip to
Absolutely.
America. Why not? Yeah. And so I went with a friend who had an outdoor camping shop, and he came along with, he had a climbing boot, a rock climbing boot, which we had actually, we were making our climbing boot at the time. It was a lightweight boot, so we were making that. And we went to the NSGA and got to the show. People loved our shoes. Yeah, where do I get your shoes from? Well, I get them from England. England? Well, New England? No, New England. No. We talk about across the pond, across the Atlantic, England, you know, England and Europe. Oh, right. Well, look, when you get somebody over here who's stuck in the shoes, we'll take them because they're really good. However, Bob, who was the outdoors man in that boot, he did get a few boots. He got quite a few orders for that. And I think the reason is that the outdoor business were used to importing from Europe skis and things like that, ski boots. You know, I think that was something they were used to doing. But athletic shoes, running shoes, no, they didn't. They didn't do that. So it took me until 1979. That's 11 years. Keep going, keep knocking on the door. Hello, America. I'm coming. I'm here. And the reason it took that time is we needed to find the key. You know, people will buy your shoe if they need to buy your shoe. If they don't, they won't make the effort. It's okay if it's that. So we needed a key. And the key came through Runner's World. Runner's World was the running magazine that had really started the craze and really was the Bible. Everybody looked at Runner's World. Everybody looked at the shoes in Runner's World. And Runner's World rated those shoes. At first, they were rating them number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And number 1, all of a sudden, when they actually, I think it was the August edition, was the shoe edition. When they came out with that, everybody wanted the number 1 shoe.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you know, whoever that was, maybe Nike, maybe New Balance, Brooks, or whoever was number 1 at the time, had no chance of fulfilling all the requirements, the numbers that everybody wanted their shoe. So it took a couple of years, but with a bit of pressure on Bob Anderson, who was the publisher of Runner's World, he sort of gave way, and he decided he would do 5 stars or star ratings. 5-star was the best one, working down 4, 3, 2, and 1, whatever it was. And so the key for me was to get a 5-star.
Yeah.
And in 1978, I designed a shoe, Aztec, which we launched for it was the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton. And we got quite a few golds. We had a good time with that. So by January of 1979, NSGA show again in February in Chicago, we had the show. We had the shoe there into the show. Lots of good comments. Yeah, like that shoe. Kmart wanted 25,000 pairs. Well, yes, okay. But Paul Feynman came along, and we sort of hit it off right from day one.
Yeah.
He was a good guy and reasonable, and he said, Joe, I'd like to sell your shoes, but we need a 5-star shoe. We need something that we can sell. And I said, Paul, I think we've got a 5-star shoe, but we got to wait until August when the shoe ratings come out.
Yeah.
And it was early on, I don't know what day, but I think it probably comes out just before August. And we knew the day was coming out. And I rang Paul, said, Paul, can you nip down to the kiosk and just buy the Runner's World and let's see where we are with this. An hour later, he came back. Joe, we got 5 stars. Oh, brilliant. We were over the moon. That's sort of one of those days that you only dream of.
Yeah.
And he also said, but your other 2 shoes got 5 stars as well. And that was a track spike and a racing shoe. So that was the key. And Paul Feynman was the door. We now had access to the USA market, which was the big market.
So at this point, you have 3 5-star shoes, which gives you the authority. And then Paul is where does Paul, he's the salesman or he's the financer?
No, Paul was, Paul with his brother and his brother-in-law, they were running a small distribution company called Boston Camping.
Okay.
Boston Camping, I thought, well, fair enough. He's got distribution in the USA. They'll bolt on the Reebok product, and we've got distribution. But however, when I went back next time to see Paul, they just dissolved the camping company, and Paul on his own, he would be the distributor. So he set up the Reebok distribution for USA.
Oh, wow. So it was a partnership that came in. They had the distribution. Let's set this up. We'll make the shoes here.
Well, he got a license. We gave him the license to do the distribution.
Yeah.
The problem now is, of course, that we're a smallish company still. If we'd have taken Kmart on 25,000 pairs, that would have taken us 6 months to produce.
Oh, wow.
However, I mean, we knew this. We knew that if we were going to hit the American market, we needed to get some volume. So we needed assistance. And I'd already been talking to Barter, who probably the biggest shoe company in the world, if you take all the manufacturing. They had a place in the UK down near London, and they were willing to make some shoes for me. But I'd also been talking to an agent of some South Korean production people, because Kmart said, yes, they'd take 25,000 pairs, but they needed them at a better price, a much better price than we could produce in the UK.
Yeah.
And when we talked to the people in South Korea, yes, we could get it there for less than half the price of manufacturing in the UK. So we now had 2 things to do. We had to get production, and we had to also look at getting cheaper production, which was fine. However, my biggest problem happened when Jeff, my brother, at that point, he got ill, he got sick, and he died.
So sorry.
Well, I mean, it was the saddest day at that time.
Yeah.
It was terrible. But again, it wasn't a question that you can just sit down there and just forget it. No, it probably spurred me on more to make sure that we made this a success.
Yeah.
And I had to bring people in to run the factory. And then Jeff would have actually taken on the job of going to Barter to get Barter to make the shoes the way he would make them in the factory. He concentrated on working in the factory. I was concentrating on sales, marketing, advancing the company. He would have done that. Well, I had to do that instead of him. He would have also gone to Korea to set things up out there. But I had taken a trip to Korea in 1979 in November and seen the product. The product was great. In the book, it's an adventure that going out to Korea, because I had a special ticket. It was around the world in 80 days or less.
Yeah.
First class standby. And it was a Pan Am ticket. Pan Am had 2 planes. One went east and one went west around the globe all the time. Just kept going around the globe, either east or west. And one I went on was east. But that's a good story. It's part of the story in the book. What happened then is that, the South Koreans, the production, there would be some time before we could start on that, because they needed at least, I think it was 250 pairs a day to go through just one production line.
Yeah.
And before that happened, we got Barter going. So Barter would be a little more expensive. And we got 20,000 pairs to satisfy the demand that Paul Feynman was then receiving.
Yeah.
Oh, the unfortunate problem is, though, that we've been using a new cushion material for the sole, which was EVA.
Yeah.
And Bata, big company, they had their own rubber factory as well. And
Oh
so
my
they
God.
they put the EVA, they started putting the EVA through the rubber factory. Unfortunately, being so new, they hadn't checked out the curing times
Yeah.
or something. And these shoes, when Paul got them, they started coming back. The midsole were collapsing.
Oh no.
Uh, Not all of them, but the bottom line to this is he never paid for the 20,000 pairs of shoes he got, which helped him get through the period until the South Korean production came up.
Yeah.
Now here is another problem, because when South Korea comes on, there's no credit line from South Korea. You got a credit line from Bata, that's okay. So we could you could afford it. That was nice.
Yeah.
But there's no credit line in South Korea. You've got to put your money up, or you've got to get a letter of credit, which means your bank has got to put the money up.
Yeah.
So it was a test. Now, how do we finance this? So we talked about, was Paul the financer? His money soon went, but he was 100% behind this. And by good fortune, I mean, we met one or two people to try and finance the company. One of the companies, in fact, had turned down Nike when Nike was looking for finance.
Really?
And his response was, well, I don't want to be the guy that backed the wrong company. Well, he didn't back either company.
Yeah.
Along came Stephen Rubin. Stephen Rubin is Pentland. They're a British company, a good-sized British company. But Stephen Rubin had a number of companies. In fact, he's called Mr. Sneaker now because he owns a lot of things. But in those days, he had a company in Hong Kong, in the Far East, called ASCO, Associated Shoe Company.
Yeah.
And they were actually doing the sourcing out there in Korea. That was their job. They did sourcing, and they sold to major retailers at a better price than anybody from the UK could do it. So he came along and he took a piece of the company. But the main thing that he did is he gave Paul a credit line.
Yeah.
So once Paul had that credit line, it meant he could order the shoes. He didn't have to pay. He could start to deliver against those masses of orders that were coming in. So that was again finding the right person, having the luck. In fact, I've just sent Stephen a book.
Yeah.
only today we posted it off to Stephen. He's anxious to see what I've written about him, I think. But along came Stephen, and that really gave the finance that Paul needed now to do the American market. Yeah. That had been my goal, get the American market. If we get that, that's the biggest influence globally for the product. I knew that once we got that market, we were going to be big.
Yeah.
However, we even had a bigger stroke of luck, because whilst this was going very nicely, we had a guy down in Los Angeles who was a tech rep. He was a Reebok tech rep and a runner. He himself was quite good at that, but he was also a salesman. And he was down there, and his wife, Frankie, was going to these aerobic classes with her girlfriends. And they were all coming back, full of this, brilliant, wow, wonderful. Oh. And so I said to them, what is this aerobic? And they said, well, it's exercising to music. And of course, it's like dancing. It's like, oh. So I thought, I want a piece of this. And he went down there to see what was happening. And the instructor was there. She wore probably a pair of running shoes, and half the class were either plimsolls or running shoes. The other half had nothing.
Yeah.
For Arnold, this was another light bulb moment. Another key was happening here. It was, why don't we produce these girls a shoe which fits like a glove, very comfortable. So for this, especially for aerobics.
What year was this?
We're talking about 1982.
Okay.
82. And then, I mean, that was the birth of the freestyle. And it was the freestyle that all of a sudden, and it took quite a while for it to sort of grow out of LA and become more national, but it grew rapidly. And what it was is that Reebok, whilst we were becoming known as a running shoe, we were not like Adidas, not like Nike.
Yeah.
We were male, sweaty. We were female. All of a sudden, Reebok was owned by women, and
Yeah.
women owned Reebok.
Yeah.
And those shoes, the sales, they went from, I think it's about 9 million, 30 million, 90 million, 300 million to 900 million. Massive sales
Wow.
in successive years.
Yeah.
And this was absolutely taken us apart. Fantastic. So the financing had stopped being a problem. Now the problem was getting the product.
Yeah.
Where do you find the product to meet that sort of number? And again, this is where your luck comes in. Both Adidas and Nike had hit a bit of a wall. They were both finding things a bit difficult. I think the running market had slowed a bit, so Nike had to pull out of 2 or 3 of the factories in South Korea, which meant there was a gap. We could move in.
Yeah.
So once they moved out, we moved in, and that's the only way we could have ever met those numbers, because they were
wow.
fantastic.
Wow. So because there's not that many factories, and all the factories were getting taken up.
Well, you can't grow it. You can't build a factory that quickly. You can't train people that quickly. It's just a matter of that. You have to have space, and that's how space arrived. But of course, this all started in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. And very soon, Jane Fonda was doing her videos wearing Reebok.
Oh, wow.
This is what caused the big explosion. Sybil Shepherd, she was wearing orange high tops to pick up her Emmy Awards.
And at this time, were you paying them, or they just chose to do that for the fashion statement?
They were doing this because they loved the idea of wearing these shoes. You didn't have to pay them. Give them a few pairs of shoes, and they were happy, happy, happy. I think that's a bit different now.
Yeah, very different.
I think it's a bit different. I think you have to buy a way in now. Your influence is well paid these days.
Yeah.
But these influencers were just a notoriety. They were such stars. And then a guy called Wendell Niles. He was an impresario out of the Hollywood area, and he knew all the stars there. Frank Sinatra, everybody down there, and he got us involved in Monte Carlo.
Okay.
It was the Princess Grace Foundation that we had a pro celebrity tennis tournament, and of course nobody turned down an invite. So we had every star you can imagine coming along there: Sean Connery, Roger Moore, John Forsyth. And John Forsyth is a nice guy, really nice guy. He'd turn up at any of the events that we were putting on. He was a super guy. So this sort of just took the Reebok brand into stardom. We became on the feet of everybody, and everybody wore them. They wanted to wear them on the street. And this is, I think we were something like, we were 80% of all Americans at that time had bought themselves a pair of Reebok.
Oh, wow. Wow,
so
that is influential. Yeah.
By late 80s, we became number one. We overtook Adidas, we overtook Nike, and we became the number one sports brand globally, which is great. And by the end of 1989, I retired.
Really?
Yeah. Well, by that time, the company had got so big.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of, because you need to grow. I mean, you can't get to those volumes without having a lot of people. A lot of people. So as it got very big, I was approaching 55, and I decided that this is a young man's game.
Yeah.
And it's also a numbers game. They were different, and numbers were not my game. I was more into the marketing, to the growth of the brand. That was more what I was into. So I decided, time for me to go.
And the one thing because I knew that you took it from this small shop in London and you made it this, like you said, the number one global brand. How was managing that transition? Because you have to have completely different skills.
Well, you do. Once we got Paul Fireman on board in the United States, and Paul and I, we had a good agreement. He would look after America, because I knew that the better he did in America, that would drive the rest of the world, and I would look after the rest of the world. I would globally put on all these different distributions around the world, which was not a difficult job to do, providing Paul did a good job.
Yeah.
Paul did a fantastic job. So I was traveling the world, building the distribution. And by the time I retired, the distribution for globally, apart from America, had gone over the $1 billion mark.
Oh,
so
wow.
We had a big distribution.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think it was decided that really we were doing this in the UK. We were doing globally in the UK, and America was on its own. It was decided that everything would go, try and put it under one roof in America.
Yeah.
So really, the need for globally to be done was beginning to end.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go and spend time just sitting on an airplane, which it had become that way. I was flying probably 2 or 3 times a month globally. I was just going around.
It was just becoming tedious and exhausting.
And when you arrive at the airport, they pick you up in a limousine, you go down to the best hotel, you sit and you have meals, you talk, and then you get another plane. So, the thrill, the energy it needs to develop the brand and to grow the brand, now it had moved into something else. And it had moved into a big machine, which was almost automatic. So it didn't really need, it was not then as entertaining. It was fantastic that we became number one. And once you've achieved some goals, you got to say, well, where do you go from that? We'd achieve the goal, become a number one, probably more than my dreams had been when we set off, just Jeff and myself, 2 people making a few pair of shoes. And 30 years later, you're number one brand globally.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Where do you go from that? You retire and spend some time sitting on a beach. Well, almost.
So I was going to actually ask, how was that transition? Because it seems like you are an empowering of people. You empower the people that you hire to go and just do them. Like, you're not micromanaging them at all. So how was that transition for you?
Well, it's difficult and it's easy. It's like, you all of a sudden you think, wow, it'll be good not to be at 35,000 feet 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah.
Good. And yet when you do stop it, it's like, where's the next ticket? Well, how is it I'm not flying anymore? It's like, it's been a drug. It's inside you. Your DNA has changed. It's now, why am I not doing this? And so, I mean, I was seeing everybody regularly because I went to all the NSGAs and all the ISPO. ISPO is the European equivalent of what NSGA.
So you knew everyone. Yeah, you're the shoe guy.
We were just going to instead of having a hands-on day-to-day, I was able to now just go around to the exhibitions, meet all the people, and spend some time with them, and enjoy that part of it instead of being a physical part, instead of a physical control. So for many years, it was nice to taper off, spend some time away from it, and just enjoy. And I still like travel. We still travel. Normally, we would be in Europe right now. Probably right now, we're talking about October. Probably in Cannes or something like that in the south of France, and enjoying people down there. But we used to go drive through Germany, Switzerland, France, Italy, and meet all the people and spend some time talking to our distribution that used to be the distribution I put on, and just spend some time in Italy in Varese at the top of Sacramonte, just sitting there looking over the lakes and enjoying a nice glass of Italian wine.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than that.
So it's not too difficult to retire, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. When you got what you need, you know what I mean? So how long have you been working on the book? And what's the book?
What's the book? Well, the book is really a lot about me rather than about Reebok. It is Reebok, but it's how I developed and went through Reebok, what it did for me. And it's not just simply how many shoes Reebok could make or the different things Reebok did. No, I think I find it most people find it very interesting because it's more of a human story than a business story. And I started writing this about 7 years ago. The reason I started writing is that I I read in the press, I read in Wikipedia, I read in sports magazines about people telling me how Reebok started. And it's wrong. It's so wrong. Yeah, so many people keep saying, well, there's J.W. Foster sons and the grandsons, they had a bright idea and changed the name. Well, we didn't change the name.
Yeah.
We had to leave and we had to set up our own company.
Yeah.
So yes, the family tradition, which is the DNA I have, of course, dates back to 1895 and just probably beyond that to my grandfather. So we share that family DNA, but not the company name.
Yeah.
And so it just needed, the story just needed putting straight. And I hope this is what it does, that it puts the story straight, and instead of people guessing as to what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the best thing about a book when it comes out is that generations and generations and generations, everyone knows it.
Well, it's out on October 1st. It's now available in America through Amazon. It is now available in the USA. But if anybody wants one signed or dedicated, because of COVID and lack of travel, they can come onto my website, which is the jwfosterheritage.com. Go onto the website, and they can buy a book. Can buy more than a book. Can buy as many as they want, and I will sign them. So, so we've already sent lots and lots and lots over to America and around the world, and I think we're about 600 books now signed.
Oh wow! So if people want a signed book, they go to jwheritage.com. I'll drop that in the show notes too. Yeah. J.W. Foster
Heritage, yes.
J.W. Foster Heritage, and I'll drop that in the show notes too.
Okay.
So everyone can grab that. Because who doesn't want a signed copy? It's so unique and cool.
Well, we can arrange for you to have a copy.
Oh, I can't wait.
Need an address.
I can't wait. So a couple more questions. When did you feel, because there's so many people listening right now that are like, until I get here, I'm going to make it. And I feel like I'm accomplished. When did you feel like you guys made it with Reebok? Was there ever a feeling? Or was it always more and more and more?
Well, it's almost step by step. Sometimes they're very small steps. But I think that when we got the 5 stars for Aztec, that was the key. That opened the market. Yeah. Once we'd opened the market in the USA, that I knew we made it. That's what I needed. So that was the first one. And of course, achieving number 1 sports brand globally, that was a fantastic thing. But I mean, by then you've made it. If you're talking about when do you know? Look, there are lots of entrepreneurs, and lots of people have brilliant ideas, and lots of them will never make it. But that should not deter you from trying, because so many people will say, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. If you talk to people, you don't have a plan from day one that takes you to become globally number 1. You don't have that plan. Your plan is really, how do we get the next step? And then the next step. So you take the plans. And if somebody said, well, those plans are, they're too much dreams, there's too much imagination. Don't worry, keep on. You've got to do it. If you can dream it, you can make it.
I love that. And this is from the founder of Reebok. He's saying, if you can dream it, you can make it. Which that should inspire everyone to go after their dreams. I love that, Joe.
Yes, hopefully.
I love that, Joe. And now my last question is, what do you think the major distinction is between those who do make it and don't make it? Is it just that they try?
I think what you've got to do, of course, to make it big, usually it means you're going to have a big company.
Yeah.
Which means you've got to have a big team. And if you're going to make it, you've got to be able to build that team. And you've got to be able to step back piece by piece to allow that team to run the company. Yeah. Because you can't do it yourself. Yeah. And the less you yourself have to do, at the end, you should have nothing to do. Yeah. You should have a good team and let them come to you. But, you don't want them to come to you. You must tell them, don't come to me with a problem.
Yeah.
Come to me with the answer.
Yeah.
And if you have a problem with maybe 2 answers, we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
We'll figure the best one. But you're not there to answer everybody's problems. That's not what you're there for. You take a team on because they can do it better than you. If you can do it better than them, then you do it. But you need people who can do it better than you. And I had a number of people, and they're still good friends, who really can do things better than I can do things.
Yeah.
Possibly the best thing I could do was to help bring them together as a team.
I love that. It's the connector. So we need to have a strong team if you want to make it big. I love it.
Yes.
Joe, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
why don't you send me your address and we'll get you a book?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Joe. I appreciate that.
You can do that with Julie. You've got all the...
Absolutely. We'll do.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll do. Awesome.
It's been a pleasure.